Alright, so this is going to be a video on how I stay warm and how I layer when it's cold. So my first step is to define cold. So I would say anywhere from 40 degrees Fahrenheit below. Now my first step is going to be one, figure out your activity. If you're going to be highly active, that changes things a lot. And two, weather conditions. Is it going to be really windy? The wind really cuts right through you. And I use those two factors to determine my base layer, and that's where we need to start at. So for me, my warmest base layer is going to be this Polartec Power Dry. It's a polar weight base layer. So it's got these large grids in it. And it's basically just shaved fleece. And it does a really good job at wicking the sweat off your body. So I think it's really important for your base layer to be form-fitting, to really have a lot of contact with your skin. That does two things. One, it allows the garment to actually pull the sweat off of your skin to keep your skin dry. And two, it kind of helps eliminate currents, wind currents that might blow through, like when you get a draft or something like that. So it just keeps your skin feeling warmer. Now, depending on the weather conditions, I have a couple of these shirts. So if it's going to be really cold, say 0 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm definitely going to go for the polar weight. If it's going to be in the 20s and warmer and I'm going to be really, really active, I might go for a mid-weight, which is, it's kind of the same thickness, but the grids are a lot smaller. So that means it's had more fleece shaven out of the garment, and that just allows more air to kind of flow through to help dry your skin off. And that's what the shaved fleece really does. These power dry garments, that shaved fleece just lets a little bit of air circulate in, and it kind of creates these little micro air currents within the garment itself, where it goes into the shaved areas and dries and then pulls that moisture out. The more of those little shavings you have, the more airflow you get. So if I'm going to be highly active, I would go for something like this, or if it's going to be warmer weather, so maybe 20s plus kind of thing. If it's going to be stationary, if I'm just going to be standing around camp or something like that, or say it's like 40 degrees out and I'm going to be active, I can be active in a short sleeve shirt and that. And then when I get done with being active, I might want to throw on this polar weight base layer because it's going to keep me warm when I'm not active and really help manage that moisture well. So the first step is really learning your layers and how they work for you, and I think the most crucial layer is going to be your base layer. Now, I see a lot of reviews online and people say layer, 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 and you'll see people putting on 3 to sometimes 6 layers of clothing, and for me, I've just found that doesn't work well. I've spent a lot of time playing around with my base layers to see how they work best for me, just see how they work together in general. I run warm and I tend to sweat, and like right now my hands are clammy. I don't feel uncomfortable in the house, but I understand that just that little bit of feeling of clamminess, that's sweat, and that makes a big deal when it's 0 degrees outside, or when it's below freezing in general. That little bit of moisture makes a big deal. So we really need to work on getting that moisture off of our skin and out of our garments and to evaporate into the atmosphere. So that's really what you got to look for. Now, how I sort of test my base layers and my layering system. When it gets cold around here, single digit weather, teens, I get really excited about that because I'll go out and then test my stuff. So a layer or a synthetic that I really like has been this Cabela's. It's a Permaloft silver jacket. And I was really wishing it was Permaloft gold. They had a gold version, but it was non-hooded. But I got this thing for 35 bucks, so I thought I'd give it a shot, and you can't go wrong with it, right? So wearing what I have on right now, I was playing around with this a couple of weeks back when we had single digit weather at night. I was up till like 3 o'clock in the morning just trying my layering systems. Now, I would have this on. This Polartec has a hoodie, and then I have this hood as well. And for my base, I have my Polartec Power Grid base layer right against my skin. I would wear kind of a compression underwear. I feel like they work a little better than maybe say boxers. They also work to wick sweat and kind of keep things in place. So I like that. And then I would put on either a soft shell pants if it's like 15 degrees or warmer, or if I'm going to be really active, I would wear this down to the negatives as well, depending on, if I'm going uphill. If it's on flat ground, I would add another layer, which would probably be something like, these are just a Target branded fleece, but it works well over top of my base layer and in between these shell pants. That, or I'll wear like a ski shell that's sort of semi-waterproof. Now, in wearing this base layer with these pants and this jacket and base layer combination, I was comfortable at 0 degrees. I'm also wearing my gloves and I'm wearing boots as well. So now the interesting thing is, I would take the jacket off, add a pretty lightweight, this is a Eddie Bauer cloud fleece. So I would add that over this just to change it up. So I'd go on like 15-minute walk. So it's not time enough for me to really sit out there and freeze, but I really pay attention to my comfort levels, and I use that to sort of judge how comfortable I'm going to be long term and where I'm going to be at as far as sweating, overheating. Now, if I was to wear the base layer with that jacket alone and get out and do anything really active, even in the 0 degree weather with that lower body layering system I had on, I would overheat. I know I would. But I was comfortable. Now, with this jacket, it doesn't look like it's that much bulkier. But when I throw this jacket over in the same weather conditions, around the 0 degrees, I wouldn't be as comfortable. So I thought that was odd. So I would take, this is what it looks like. It doesn't look like I'm overstuffing anything. So I would take this layer off and try it again. And I kind of went back and forth with just changing this layer out with this jacket, and I was more comfortable with this fleece off and just this right over top of the fleece than I was with having the fleece over my base layer, which is technically a fleece as well. So that gets me really thinking, like, why am I more comfortable? Well, this jacket, it's Permaloft Silver, which is a puffy style of insulation, so it has to loft. And it gets a little bit tight in the arms, so and it doesn't feel tight at all. It's just, I've come to realize how much this thing lofts inside that you don't really feel. That jacket, it's just warmer over my base layer. So now if I was going to do a soft shell, which would probably be more conducive to what I would want to wear when I was hiking, I would throw this soft shell over top of both of these, and I still wouldn't be quite as comfortable as I was with just the Permaloft jacket. But if I'm going to be really active, this is probably going to work well for me in those kind of weather conditions, because my insulation is just the 2 layers of fleece now. So, and then there's a little bit of a micro piling to the back of this, but that really just helps manage moisture more than anything. So this would probably be my really active climb a mountain setup in those weather conditions. And something about the way this power dry base layer works. My brother, and I guess I can kind of give you guys some other examples. My brother worked for Asplund. He was a climber, and in the wintertime they would often have them climbing mountains to clean off the lines, the power lines. So they're working up on mountaintops and temperatures anywhere from -10 up to 15 degrees in the winter, and they got wind chills up there of 30 miles an hour, or wind speeds of 30 miles an hour. So he was complaining that everybody was freezing. They're just working, the conditions are miserable. So I asked him what he was wearing, and he went through the list of what he was doing, and he was, to me, I told him, I said, well, you're wearing too much. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm freezing. So I gave him basically the equivalent of this mid-weight power dry base layer. It had the same kind of gridding. It was like the older version of the polar weight that they had, and I told him to wear that and tell me what he thought. So he wore it, and he came back the next day and he told me he was freezing. And I was like, well, what are you wearing? So he went through the list and he told me he was wearing the base layer, another jacket over top of that, another jacket over top of that, and then I think maybe two more. No, it was the base layer, a shirt, a jacket, another jacket, and then a shell. And I was like, well, you're still wearing too much. He goes, man, I'm freezing in this. I'm like, I know. Take it off. I said, just try it. I said, you got other stuff in the truck. You can always put it back on if you feel like you need it. I'm like, just wear the base layer. He has a Permaloft gold jacket, similar to this. It's a non-hooded version. And I thought, wear that right over top of your base layer, and then just put on a protective shell, because they're out in briars and really thick brush. So, if you wear this type of jacket in those kind of conditions, you're just going to tear it all to pieces, rip it to shreds. And I was like, and tell me how that feels. So the next day he wore it, and it was the coldest day they had had. I think it was like -5 or something, plus the wind of 30 miles an hour. And he comes back, he's like, I'm the only person on the mountain that was warm. Everybody else was completely freezing. And he couldn't believe how much warmer he was wearing that combination, and he was taking so many layers off. So part of the problem was some of the layers he was wearing weren't really the greatest for staying warm. I think his outer shell, and which he was still wearing an outer shell that was kind of cotton based, but it didn't seem to affect him too much when he was getting that moisture off of his body. So beforehand he was wearing like a cotton long sleeve type shirt as an insulating layer and stuff like that. It just doesn't work. So when he took the layers off and just stuck with an insulating layer or a base layer and an insulating layer and then just a protective type shell, he stayed really warm. So to me, the maximum I would ever recommend, or I would try to work my system to, would be 3 layers, no matter what I'm doing. Now there's certain situations where I might just throw something on over top of it, like a big down jacket at a summit, when I don't want it to pull layers off and be exposed if the winds are extremely high. Now if I can find an area where I can get out of the wind, I'm going to pull one of those layers off for sure. But some of those extreme conditions, it's not really conducive to do that. Some other stuff to think about when you're really trying to stay warm is, especially if you're going to overnight camp. I always bring extra socks, because when I get there I take them off. And talking about feet in general, a lot of people like to put on 2 or 3 layers of socks. These, and to me, I just feel like for me, it's the wrong approach. I've learned that even at 0 degrees, if I'm being active, my feet are generating a lot of heat. So my preferred type of shoe would be a ultralight, like Gore-Tex, kind of just running shoe almost, or maybe a ankle height type of boot, but the really light ones. And I would wear socks that are typically thinner than this, like just a wool running sock almost kind of thing. Just really thin socks for when I'm active, because I know my feet generate a lot of heat and they tend to sweat a lot, and moisture management is my biggest concern in the winter, is keeping that warm. And I'm going to be fine when I'm moving. If I stop moving, I'm going to get cold. And then I get to base camp at night, I pull my socks off, and then I will switch out and put on a slightly thicker pair of wool socks to sleep in. Or if I'm going to go camping for a couple of days, I'm going to probably pack a pair of boots to use around camp that are kind of warm, just really thick, warm boots. And if I'm going to be doing a little bit of work around camp, I'm probably just going to keep the socks on that I had in my tennis shoes. But if I'm done for the evening, I may just throw on, even if I'm done for the evening, I'm probably going to still leave those socks on until I go to bed. And when I go to bed, I'm going to pull my socks off. I'm going to try to give it a few minutes, and I might rub them with my hands to try to get any of that moisture off of my feet. And then I'm going to put on another pair of socks that are completely dry, that I have not been sweating in. And I will leave the same socks in my bag with me to keep them warm at night. And so when I put them on the next day, they're still comfortable enough. They're going to have moisture in them, but I feel like it's better than throwing on my thick socks. And I'll keep doing that and repeat that process when I'm camping. Another really important layer is like a face mask of some sort. Now, depending on weather, like summertime, alpine, something like this buff is about all I need. It's great because it's super light, doesn't weigh a whole lot. If you don't need it, you can pull it off. When you get up above tree line and you get into that windy zone where the wind's just blowing, you can pull it up over your nose. And even with just a pair of sunglasses, you have pretty much complete face protection, and that's really lightweight. I also find that when I am doing really aerobic activities like snowshoeing or something in fresh powder, especially if you're getting in that 24 inches plus of powder where you're sinking in 10 inches every step or more, depending on your snowshoes. When I'm being really aerobic, this is all that I want or need. You're really generating a lot of heat in those situations. So I would wear something like base layer, kind of these soft shell pants, and basically what I have on here with my soft shell jacket, and I'm done with that. That's all I need. And the only time I would switch out is if you take a rest break, you might pull out the puffy and put that on or something like that. And at some point I'd like to upgrade that puffy to a down for those types of situations where I'm not actively using it. Just because down's a little bit lighter, and I feel like some of the down garments I can get them sized a little better, because I would really like this to function a little better over what I'm wearing right now. And even with the loft of this jacket, it fits me just fine, but for some reason it's just not as warm in this combination as it is, at least for standstill. Like there's a noticeable difference in the warmth. Now, if I'm going to be really active in this combination, then yeah, it's probably, I'm going to overheat in this unless it's negative 18 degrees or something like that, and I'm just walking fairly flat ground for a long distance. Depends on how long you're being active for and that kind of thing. You do a 30-mile hike, and you really got to learn your layering systems, and you got to learn to stay dry. So what else do I have? Another type of face mask might be this guy right here. I really love this as an added layer when the conditions are well below freezing. This is great to throw on. I like it because it's got holes right here, so it makes breathing really easy, and you don't get as much condensation. And it's got the kind of the fleece and neoprene right through here, but it's just really, really warm. It adds a lot of warmth to the head and really does a good job of protecting you. Say it's 15 degrees and 30-mile-an-hour winds, and you're climbing the side of a mountain, you got snow blowing and beating on you. This just does a great job of protecting you in that situation. You can still breathe. You might get a little bit cold around the nose and stuff, but I would prefer this over just something that's going to be completely solid. Or in that situation, you could always have both of them. And I think this is a little bit more versatile for me, because this is light enough to breathe through really easy. They also make a fleece face mask. This is really similar to this, and I find that those are harder for me to breathe through. So this right here, that'll help protect the nostrils, keeps a lot of that wind out. It does a great job in this situation. So this is kind of my go-to for if it gets really cold. And plus I would throw on like a pair of goggles or something with that. So it's pretty much no skin exposure at all. And that's what really keeps you warm, because you don't have that biting cold against your skin anywhere. So 100% completely covered skin. For the good days or really active pursuits, I use something like a little liner glove here. This is a Scott's. It's got a leather palm. I find this is pretty much all the protection I need if I'm being really, really active. So snowshoeing or something like that, this is pretty much all I need, because I don't want to sweat out my hands. I'm really keen on managing my moisture levels. I would rather be slightly uncomfortable than to overheat. Something like this. This is just a Continental Divide glove. Like I got them from Sam's Club for like 19 bucks. These are kind of my shell gloves. If I'm just starting out, I might have these on or something just to warm, or if I stop to take a break or something like that, I might throw these on to stay warm. depending on how cold or how windy the conditions are, normally is what I would consider my extreme level. So even if it's 20 degrees, and that can be pretty comfortable if the wind's not blowing, but you got 30-mile-an-hour winds, I'm probably going to want to pull these out and throw them on just to stay warm when I rest, or take a lunch break or whatever. But then when I go back to hiking, I'm pretty quickly going to shove those back in the jacket and just throw on my shell gloves here, just to give me that bit of protection from the wind, because this is sort of a soft shell type on the outside, and basically it's wind protection more than anything. It keeps the wind off, and it provides just a little bit of insulation. And this is how I thermal regulate. So I use my hands and my head with lighter layers, because if I insulate my head really well and insulate my hands really well, I can get by with fewer layers in my body. So that's what works for me. Another situation I guess I should describe with wearing this Polartec base layer. My girlfriend, I kind of consider her a vampire when it comes to staying warm, because she practically generates no body heat at all. So she was having trouble staying warm going to class, and I would ask her what she's wearing, and she has the same Permaloft sport jacket that I have from Cabela's, and she was wearing that, and I got her one of the Power Dry base layers for Christmas one year, and then she would put on like a fleece or something like that over top of it, or she was adding maybe like 2 extra layers in there, and they were decent types of material. So I told her, I was like, well, just take them off and just wear your jacket over top of your base layer and see how that works. And she was really reluctant, because she's taking clothes off and she's already freezing. And I'm saying, you're not going to be warm, but you're not going to be shivering anymore. So she tried that, and at 0 degrees, even for her, which completely amazed me, to be honest, because it was more of an experiment, because it works for me, and I sweat a lot. So I was just curious if that would help her or hinder her. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. But, she wasn't warm, but she wasn't shivering anymore. She would tell me it's more tolerable, and she would wear gloves and cover her head up and stuff like that as well. So it really made a big difference for her just to put that jacket on over top of a base layer. And really, it's just getting that lofting insulation as close to the body with as few layers as possible really seems to just help. I think when you get into shell fabrics, such as this soft shell right here, if you're trying to put an insulating layer over top of this, I think it really hinders your ability to insulate, because odds are this is trapping a little bit of moisture. This jacket breathes really well, but it's still going to trap some form of moisture. And this is just an odd layer, because it's a lot of fabric to warm up. So when you're wearing, when you want to really feel that warmth against your skin, you need lightweight fabrics that are going to warm really easily, and you need insulation that's not dense, that's going to warm really easy. That's what gives you that instant feel of warmth. So this jacket, and down jackets alike, and other types of insulation, they have this super light micro ripstop fabric. It weighs practically nothing. This jacket weighs in at like 16 ounces, 16.6 or something, so right around a pound, slightly less than it's like 500 grams or something like that, maybe a little bit more. But it warms up, and it just feels so much warmer against your body when you don't have a few layers. So I think that's why, for me, when I put this fleece over top of my base, I don't feel as comfortable, because I haven't warmed my fleece up completely yet. So, if I get really active, I'm gonna probably warm up and start sweating in it. But if I just put that insulating layer right over top of my base layer, then the outer layer of that insulating layer is just warmth. It warms up really quickly, and it just holds that heat there. So that's something to consider when you're layering your clothing. I always feel like the more layers I put on, the harder it is for that sweat to get out and evaporate. So the fewer layers you can go, at least in my opinion, the better off you're going to be as far as managing your moisture. You're going to make it easier to manage the moisture and stay warmer. So learn your layers if you can. Get out and take your own clothing system and just change it up. Try stuff that you don't think would work by taking layers off, and see how that works. Now, my thoughts on wool. I like wool base layers. I tend to use those more for temperatures, 20 and plus, or if I'm going to be traveling where I'm not going to be able to wash clothing or something like that. If I want to go out for several days, I could substitute this for a heavyweight wool base layer and get a very similar result. So, and I would still wear this jacket just over top of that wool base layer because I find that makes me feel more comfortable than even if I put it over top of this fleece for when I'm just standing around. So, if you guys have any questions, hit me up and I'll do what I can to help.